meeting on the Code of Conduct. I would like to thank, first of all, Sarah and Christos from ASME and DG Grow for this very good initiative that we had the opportunity to organize today with our external speakers, specialists on the Code of Conduct, Hélène Diane Dage from Deputy Head of Unit DG Grow F3, and Martin Kühnemund, the Head of European Evaluations from Ipsos. Welcome to this online session, online info session on the Code of Conduct. And we are ready to start. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Christos and then to Sarah for a short welcome.
I don't want to take any of the time because time is valuable, and we are here with a very specific and very brief time slot on a very important issue. So I would just like to say thank you, Spiros and Giada and all the colleagues from the sector group Agri-Food on your interest in this topic. I would like also to mention for those of you who don't know already that I think it's in 2 weeks, yeah, approximately in 2 weeks. The group is meeting in Cologne. I will be there. Sarah will be as well. From our side, Sarah will take the floor later and will inform you as well. Plus our colleague Melissa, who is also in the call. And we will have the opportunity to discuss on various topics in person, and also to give you some policy updates on what's happening here in Brussels and the different policy initiatives. And that's all from my side. I don't want to take any of the time. I'm just passing the floor to my colleague Sarah from ASMEA, and let's start. Thank you, Spiros.
Thank you very much, Christos.
Yeah, thank you, Christos. Thank you, Spiros. Good morning to all of you. It's really good to see you today here for this short info session. Just a few words on why we are doing this session. So you might have read the annual guidance note, and one of the priorities for the group this year is exactly the promotion of the Code of Conduct to the SMEs. We have already touched upon this topic some time ago with a sector group, and we thought it might be a very good idea just to have another presentation again to give you an update on the code itself. In the meantime, the Code of Conduct tool has been launched too, which will also be presented to you, as well as some insights of a mapping study that was conducted recently. Again, to my question, why we are doing this session, because we need the network here as well. We need you as members of the group, the Agri-Food group, to promote both the code and the tool to your SME clients. I'm not gonna take too much time as well. So big thanks to the speakers. Thank you so much for being here today, for your availability, as well as to the colleagues involved from DG Grow, from DG Sante for the nice collaboration for setting up this session. And yeah, as already said, I will also be in Cologne with you in 2 weeks' time, so we can further discuss this topic, and of course all the other things that are ongoing nowadays. So thanks a lot again. I'm looking forward to meet you in 2 weeks' time. And Spiros, I give the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks a lot for the introduction and the reminder, let's say, for our next meeting, which will take place in Cologne, together with the thematic group Sustainability and the organization of a decentralized training on the 3rd day. I would now like to give the floor to our first speaker, who is Hélène Diane Dage, who is the Deputy Head of Unit from DG Grow F3, who will give us the state of play, the IT tools, and next steps on the Code of Conduct. Hélène, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I think Melissa can eventually try to share the PowerPoint presentation, because she might be more skilled than me for that purpose.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Right
so my understanding is that most of you are already familiar with the Code of Conduct. This code of conduct was actually designed by industry with the support of the European Commission no 2.5 years ago. And I think it's really a fantastic success stories in terms of collaboration between the different stakeholders in being and willingness to actually develop a strategic vision for the sustainability transition of a whole industrial sector. During the discussions that we had, because I was already participating then, I participated to the drafting of this code of conduct. I think one very important element for me was the fact that I highlighted and all the stakeholders recognized that while for many very big companies, actually they already have some kind of strategic agenda. They have the means, resources, including not only financial but also human, to actually see that this sustainability transition can be a win-win for them because they can try different technologies on a smaller scale and deploy them all across their production capacities. They can also have the resources, the financial resources to actually then put that to fruition in terms also of marketing image. But for SMEs, it was far more of a challenge because they don't have the similar resources, while it could also help them quite a lot in terms of improving not only their sustainability, but eventually also their competitiveness and their resilience. So I will present you on a bit again the code of conduct and put the emphasis on the elements which actually I think are more relevant for the time being. In the present context also of a lot of volatility on the commodity markets, especially agricultural ones, this also volatility and increase in energy prices, which has to be stabilized. There's a lot also of the elements which are proposed in the code of conduct, which actually would really enable and SMEs to actually improve, reduce their costs, improve their overall competitiveness. And so that's why we think we should again reach out to them. So the code entered into force in July 2021, so 2.5 years ago. Now we have more than 100 signatories, but reaching out to SMEs has proven, and we were expecting that, relatively complex. Also, those last 2 years, we know it all have not been business as usual. So those SMEs have been facing a lot of challenges. One of them also being the fact that with this food inflation, sometimes it was a bit difficult for them to actually transfer the increases in cost of production into the price that they will be getting, but also they didn't have much visibility on their market over the long term, because in the context of hyper food inflation, yes, consumers who do not necessarily have also the increasing purchasing powers have to make choices. And so making additional investments when you have very little visibility over 2-3 years was challenging. While at the same time, we really realized that many of those objectives are really fundamental for them, and especially in the present context, like everything which is like the win-win, the easy to grab fruits of this sustainability transition, investing in renewable energy, for example, implementing systematically resource efficiency, trying to develop some circular business models. But what we see is that many of those objectives, actually, for one single SME, it's almost impossible to do. They need to be doing that with either peers, with other companies in collaboration, or they need to be actually supported in this sustainability transition. First, to be able to identify what are the best elements for them in there, what are the what are the best, the most promising, then what are the best technologies, then to find also the right company to eventually make those technological changes, and then also and then the cost of deploying such technologies. If you're investing this on a relatively small scale, on a very large scale, it's clearly not going to be the same price. It's also economies of scale. So this is why we believe that it's really very important now in the present context to really boost the uptake of the code of conduct by SMEs. So I'm going to very quickly go through the different objectives that we have here on the screen. You can come back to the two Desmées. Thank you very much, and identify some of them which can be very relevant. So the climate neutral food chain. So yes, there is the notion of renewable energy. So what are we going to do also on the EU side for that purpose? This year, with the single market program, which is the successor of the COSMO program, we're going to be funding renewable energy communities for agri-food and retail SMEs. Because there we see that for investment in renewable energy systems, if you have a number of companies in a specific area which are investing commonly in different types of renewable energy production capacities, and then manage also this production together, negotiate also together with energy companies, the price at which they can eventually sell the overproduction, and the price at which they can get the rest. If they invest commonly also in energy, battery systems, etc., they can have a relatively stable system, a relatively stable output, and they can also then use the energy one at a certain time, another time. So it gives really far more possibilities to actually have a system which is really efficient. And so there we think it's very important to give the possibility and to help them. So we will launch this call. We are presently in the process of designing, fine-tuning the concept. And we think that here also the EN will have a particular role to play, because you have the network between the different chambers of commerce, etc. And we will try to have local projects, but which are networked together. And we think that there the EN can help. And why do we want to give this possibility to network those projects together? Because like that, also in terms of technological support, in terms of finding out the best technologies, in terms of finding out the best prices also for deploying those technologies, the fact that you can bring all those projects together, that you can do this networking, can really improve considerably on the financial sustainability of such investments. So this is, and also then provide the technological support. So that's something where we really see the EN, that's an example of the very important added value of this networking at European level between the different business support organizations, because you can really benefit from each other's strengths, and also have this pooling of the demand, which enables them to have, again, better prices. Another element where we think it's also a challenge, for example, and where the SMEs would need quite a bit also of support is with the circularity, the fourth objective, and because we know that we are revising the packaging also regulations, and there also to deploy a more sustainable packaging in SMEs, in agri-food SMEs, that also can be for them also something, significant investments, and where they also might need some support. So the idea with the code is, if an SME is actually signing, or any company, to the code, okay, it acknowledges the strategic vision that we have for the companies for the future. But at the same time, it's doesn't mean that they have to implement everything. We know very well that the small company has to find priorities. And there again, that's where we see a very important role for the EN members, because among all those different options that you have there are some which are going to be making more sense for one company, while another one is going to be making more sense for another company, depending on where they are on their sustainability journey, depending on their typology of production and production cost, depending also maybe on how they position themselves also on the market, and if they have customers which are going to be more attentive, for example, to a very sustainable packaging, or to actually the origin of the products that they are using, if it's coming from some organic production. So depending on how they position themselves, they might want to embrace in priority one or the other objectives. And we think that there they need to have also some support and some advice, and that the EN members can really help them to do this work. And then there's also one important element which I want to mention. So Melissa, I've not finished yet. The first, yes, it's this the notion of sustainable value creation through partnership. And this is something which we would like to be able to implement more. We know it's not easy. we try also to do with, to encourage in the cluster to do that, is how to actually then maybe the bigger partners, if an SME is a subcontractor for another company, how can then the bigger companies actually support this transition towards sustainability and healthy food production of their smaller players. Because now we have heard in the last few weeks, we have seen the problems of this perceived unfairness of the value creation along the value chain, which is clearly true for some companies, not for others. But in general, having this more fairness and more support between the different partners is very important. Also for food security in Europe, I have to say it, because if you want to have a resilient food value chain, you need to have companies all along the value chain which are financially sustainable. So this, environmental sustainability should not be at the detriment of financial sustainability. It can go hand in hand, and it's possible to actually find win-win solutions. Now, the next slide. Thank you, Melissa. We have no.
Can I see one thing? We don't see the slides.
Oh, you don't see the slides?
At all.
Because I see them, and Melissa is sharing them.
It says to me,
We
you're
do.
sharing the screen.
Anybody else who doesn't see the slides?
We do see the
Because
I can
slides,
see
Spiros,
them.
yes.
Do you
It's
see them?
okay.
I don't see the slides. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know why. Okay.
Um,
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so I will continue, but anyway, we share the slides so you can see it later, and you can also look online. I mean, we have a page. If you Google Agri-Food Code of Conduct, you will find it, and there's all the explanations, and it's self-explanatory. So don't worry about that. You're not missing major information. So where we know we have more than 140 signatories, but mostly big companies. Some of the big companies have done some more actually front-runner commitments, so they go beyond some of the proposals which are in the code. We're looking also into, we're also looking very much, very attentive at we're asking from big companies some reporting and looking into it. In any case, most of the big companies, they already have to do some reporting in their annual reporting on SDGs, for example, on all sorts of different, because this sustainability is something that they will typically report on, but this is something we check. So, I mean, we have been very clear from the beginning, this tool is about having a joint common strategy. This is not about greenwashing. And this is something which we are very attentive to. So SMEs who sign up to the code should not be afraid that they actually associate themselves to something which is not verified and not this is really something which is also, we hope in the future might also be like a positive element for the SMEs. Next slide, please. So so what we have done is we have for the SMEs developed the IT tool. So the IT tool, what we wanted to see is also for those SMEs to be able to see what are the priorities and what are the actions and which present the most significant opportunities for them, but also how they could eventually implement them, and to also see how the technologies which will enable their implementation would actually enable also to, yes, for them to lower their costs, and so will make financially would be a wise investment. In the IT tool, we try to really also give examples. That's something which we will do progressively for each action which is proposed in the code of best practice in that area of a company which has actually deployed this technology for that purpose and the positive result of that. So this best practice dimension is something which is very important. And so we would like to actually invite you to look at the IT tool after this session, clearly, and to see how you could also use it with SMEs. So the idea is that if an SME, the first step is to mobilize the SME, to reach out to the Agri-Food SMEs and ask them, do you want that together? We do a bit of an assessment of the opportunities that you have in terms of improving your sustainability. That's the idea. And then you use the IT tool with them to go through it, or they can do it on their own to actually discover best practices for each objective and select where they are interested in, and then eventually already generate a pledge on the code of conduct. Next slide, please. So this is some screenshots of what you would have, how the IT tool looks, but I really invite you to have a look. So we're really basically presenting the code of conduct. All those aspirational objectives are already quite clear, and then there's already all the actions. So it's already a very practical code, if I might say so. So what do we want to do next? So outreach to get this critical mass, yes, and so that's where all the business support organizations have a role to play. We also mobilizing, I explained it already before, the cluster community. For that purpose, last year we had also launched this a call for Agri-Food Sustainability Cluster Partnerships, which was about the implementation of the Code of Conduct also. We continue our collaboration with the main stakeholders, which are called the liaison group of the Code of Conduct, to see how all those stakeholders can also mobilize on their national and regional networks, also to encourage the uptake of the code. And finally, we are now in the process. Next week, we're going to be launching the transition pathway for the Agri-Food Code of Conduct, which is going to present a very large number of enablers and how we can mobilize different European funding and policies to actually boost the sustainability transition and also the resilience of the agri-food ecosystem, also digitalization, but very much to the support of the sustainability transition, etc. I will not get into detail on that, but most of it, let's say very largely, it is about how to support and enable the and support this implementation of the Code of Conduct. And at a certain stage, when we will have a transition pathway platform, where we will also provide information on funding possibilities, which are at EU level or at national regional level, enable also networking between companies. Next slide, please. Voilà, so that's the end, and so that's how I want to conclude, that we really need the business support organizations to reach out to their SMEs, to convince them that actually this sustainability transition can be a win-win for them, that sustainability transition it can and also reinforce financial sustainability for companies when it's done in an appropriate way, that they can reach out for support, that business support organizations are there for that. Show them best practices also in the IT tools so that they can choose what is best for them. And we really thank you very much for what you are going to do for your agri-food SMEs. Thank you very much. It's over for me.
Thank you very much, Helene, for your very interesting presentation. We will go on with the next presentation, and then we will have time for discussion and question and answers. So I would now like to give the floor to Martin Kühnemund, who is the head of European evaluation from Ipsos. So Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I am just in the process of trying to share some slides. But essentially, as was noted, my name is Martin Kühnemund. I work for a company called Ipsos, which is one of the world's largest market and social research companies. I work specifically in the public affairs part and in the policy and evaluation team, which conducts work for public sector clients, including the European Commission. And for the last year and a half or so, we have been working for the Commission on a study to map the different commitments pledged under the EU Code of Conduct. Important to note, this was not an evaluation per se, so it wasn't really about judging the merit or worth of the Code of Conduct, but it was to enhance the evidence base and provide further information about what companies are actually signatories, meaning companies and associations, are actually committing to, and how they're getting on with that. I'll just be presenting a few brief highlights from this. Obviously don't have time to go through everything we found, but I have put a link in the chat where all of our deliverables, our reports, as well as some diagrams from them that are interactive and clickable, are available under the reporting and then mapping reports part. So if you're interested in further detail, I can answer questions afterwards, obviously, but also you can have a look for yourself there. So very briefly, what we've been up to. The study consisted of 5 tasks, but really most important here is task number 2, the mapping of the commitments. We also under task 3 looked at some other similar initiatives to draw out some learning points there. And as I said, we helped the Commission develop some communication materials to spread the message. In more detail, this was carried out in 2 waves. So we began in 2022, developed a framework for mapping, including some categories and subcategories, and then went through all of the pledges by the signatories as well as their annual reports, and drew out some key information from that. We then repeated this exercise in 2023 with a refined framework and including the latest commitments that were made in late 2022 and early 2023. And as I said, we also did have a look at some of the other initiatives for comparative purposes. What did we find then? As was already noted, our cutoff point was the 31st of July. I think there are 140 signatories by now, but at the time there were 136, of which 75 were companies. The vast majority of them large enterprises, including some of the largest players in the various sectors. But also 8 SMEs. Then, of course, there's a lot more SMEs and other companies that are represented via the associations that have signed up to the pledge, of which there are 61. And they come from a variety of sectors, mostly from, let's say, the middle part of the food chain, food manufacturing in particular, also beverages, and a large number of retailers. And then a smattering of signatories from other sectors, including agriculture and several sort of, professional services firms as well. We also have a couple of chemicals companies with a view to fertilizers and such. So really quite a broad representation, around 11 different sectors that we counted. Between them, the companies that have signed up have made 524 commitments. I should say, I'm hoping everyone can see the slides now, but if not, please shout. The commitments, the way they break down across the 7 aspirational objectives, as Hélène just explained, is shown in this graph. And so you can see here there's commitments across all of them, but the majority are really around climate neutral food chain, as well as circular and resource efficient food chain. That's where 103 commitments each. Also a lot on healthy, balanced and sustainable diets. But of course, companies can make more than one commitment. You see here, so we're talking about 75 companies having made 524 commitments, which goes to show that they can make multiple ones. That's why it's maybe also interesting to look at the percentage of company signatories that have committed to action under each of them. And there you can see here that 85% of the company signatories, for example, have made at least one commitment, in some cases more than one, on climate neutrality. And also here the breakdown of the others, which I'll not talk to in the interest of time. We then also broke those aspirational objectives down into a number of subcategories, between 2 and 5 each, and then map commitments across those subcategories. I won't go into all of the detail here, but just to note that on the website, you can also find this wheel chart diagram, which is actually interactive and clickable. So you can click on any of the subcategories, and then it takes you straight to the number of commitments made, which companies committed, etc., which is maybe worth looking at some point if you're interested. But just to briefly say, when we look at this by subcategories, then again, the largest number here is on climate neutrality, and more specifically on greenhouse gas emissions from the company's own operations as opposed to the supply chain. And far fewer commitments in some of these other areas. For example, the promotion and reduction of food waste at household level. That was only the subject of 2 of the commitments that we looked at so far. We also then looked at this sector by sector and found some interesting trends. So just again, as an example here, if you look at all the commitments under the first aspirational objectives, you can see here that manufacturers of food products and beverages focus primarily on food composition, quite a lot there on reformulation, portion sizes, etc. The beverage sector also was quite active under education, which is mainly, about hydration, but also alcohol consumption, responsible alcohol consumption. Retailers, on the other hand, are also relatively more active when it comes to consumer information and labeling. So, some of these trends perhaps interesting to note. Similarly, for the fourth aspirational objective on circularity and resource efficiency, again, perhaps unsurprisingly, you see here that manufacturers are mainly about sustainable materials for packaging. That's where the bulk of the commitments were. Retailers were more active on recycling and reusing materials. And again, we have similar information for all of the aspirational objectives and subcategories, as well as a bit more of a qualitative narrative that explains a little bit more about what the commitments consisted of, and also how they're relevant to EU policy objectives. I should also say we also have in the annex to one of our reports basically a list of some good practices in terms of how commitments were formulated, in terms of being smart, specific, measurable, etc. That could perhaps be a useful resource for some of you. Associations, on the other hand, of course, also sign up to the code, and quite a lot of them do. They are not expected to make concrete commitments and pledges in the same way as companies do, but rather to commit to promoting the code among their members, providing support, etc., etc. Some of this is already implicit in the fact that these associations have signed up, but this graph shows how many of them have actually also explicitly committed to each of these. And you can see here that some, 9 specifically, also have made commitments to take concrete action beyond the general principles of the code, which is quite noteworthy. It's obviously clear that some but not all associations are in a position to do that, but it's perhaps something to be noted and to be encouraged further. As some of you may know, the signing up to the code also implies a commitment to submit a report annually, although I should say not for SMEs. So the rules are a bit lighter for SMEs. But everyone except SMEs is required to submit a report annually. And as you can see here, the majority of signatories, but not all signatories, have done that. And in fact, last year at the cutoff points that we looked at, the percentage of those who had actually submitted such a report was a bit lower than it was the previous year, which is something to be looked at further as to the reasons for that and how it might be addressed in future. The good news is that these monitoring reports have become better. They've become clearer, more consistent in terms of the format. So the vast majority of the signatories who do submit a report now do refer explicitly to their commitments, and they do report quite well overall on the activities that they undertook and also on the results of these activities. Although they don't always report on progress against quantified targets, but there's a number of reasons why that is sometimes challenging for them. We also found during the last round of the review that the first set of commitments have actually already been fulfilled. So 12 signatory companies in total actually reported that they had achieved some of the targets that they'd set for themselves. And you see a couple of examples here. And several also then used the opportunity to update or extend their commitments, meaning that the commitment that they originally submitted in 2021 or 2022 was now made more ambitious, or additional elements added to it, which again is also encouraging to see. Which then just brings me to the concluding reflections, just very briefly. It's obviously a lot of positives, as Elaine already mentioned. The number of signatories has more than doubled since the code was launched in 2021, more than 500 commitments that really cover all of the objectives of the code and by and large are very well aligned with relevant policy objectives. The annual reporting has become more consistent and more meaningful. And as I just said, the first few commitments have already been fulfilled, and some of them are now being updated or expanded. On the other hand, in the first wave of our mapping, we pinpointed a few issues to be addressed, and found that in the second wave that the extent to which progress had been made had been somewhat limited. So the membership, as you saw at the outset, or the number of signatories is considerable, but arguably still not sufficient to achieve the desired far-reaching desired change. Some country sectors are underrepresented, and of course, the number of SMEs that are direct signatories is still very low. When you look at the commitments, then some of them are very ambitious, and some of them are very concrete and very specific. Others less so, and so this is still something that that warrants further attention. There may also be additional things that the industry associations can do, for example, in terms of promoting cooperative intersectoral commitments. So it would seem that they're uniquely well placed to look into how different sectors can actually, and companies in different sectors could actually collaborate and make joint commitments. And then also the number of signatories in 2023 grew, but perhaps not by as much as was hoped for. In view of that, to consider whether there might be a certain loss of momentum and how that could be reversed and momentum built again. It's obviously a question about incentivizing industry stakeholders, as was already noted. Of course, in particular, large players are often already part of other voluntary initiatives and have reporting obligations, and so the exact place of the code in this ecosystem is something that could perhaps be even better clarified and crystallized. And there's also a bit of a question as commitments evolve, as I just said, some of them are being expanded and updated, how that is documented and reflected in the pledges, and whether there's a need for, you know, a formal update of commitments every, for example, 3 years or so. And then just before I close, just very briefly, as I said at the outset, we also looked at a number of other voluntary initiatives to seek some inspiration and to look at how they relate to the code. And that review really suggested, of course, there is a lot out there. There's a number of sectoral initiatives. There are national, European, in some cases global voluntary initiatives, sometimes aimed at specific sectors, sometimes aimed at specific objectives, for example, waste reduction. By comparison, the code of conduct is quite unique in the sense that it is very broad in scope, so it's open to all relevant sectors, and it also provides for a very high degree of flexibility. So those 7 aspirational objectives, they essentially encapsulate pretty much anything that companies or associations may want to submit to in the interest of healthier and more sustainable food production and diets. That provides a high degree of flexibility, but it also leads to some question marks around how those commitments can be monitored and how specific they are actually having to be. And we did nonetheless then draw on some of these other initiatives to pull out some potential learnings. You can find that in the relevant reports, but I think in the interest of time, I'll just leave it there for now. And thank you very much for your attention. As I said, more details can be found under the link I posted in the chat.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you very much for the very interesting insights, for the code of conduct and the detailed information you provided us with. I would like now open the floor to a discussion or question and answer session. Being the first one, who I would like to ask you something that came to my mind right now. You have mentioned that in your presentation that only from the companies that signed the code of conduct so far, we had only 8 SMEs. Can you see why so few companies, so few SMEs managed or were willing to sign the code of conduct?
I mean, I can speculate. We didn't look at this systematically, and we didn't speak to SMEs about barriers. We merely reviewed their commitments. But clearly, this does require a bit of an investment in time, and it is important, for SMEs to then consider what they can actually do beyond what they're already doing. Even some of the commitments that we did look at from SMEs that signed up, but also some others. Were in some cases limited to essentially outlining what's already being done, and some great things are being done by SMEs clearly, but it wasn't always clear in those cases what additional actions SMEs were actually pledging to. So I suspect there are lots of SMEs out there that are already doing a lot, but may perhaps feel like they're already doing everything they can, and so what's the point? I think it's a question of visibility, it's a question of resources, but it's also perhaps a question of clarity around ideas for what else SMEs can actually be doing. And then if they do additional things, then what do they actually get out of submitting this as commitments under the code of conduct, as opposed to just getting on with it and doing it anyway?
Yeah. You bring me to a very good point, because I wanted to ask you, but to ask that to you, or to speculate what you have said. What is the meaning actually if an SME comes to me and say, okay, what is the reason? What is the meaning? What is the added value for me as a small SME, European SME, to sign this kind of code of conduct? So we have to be clear in order to make them aware of the significant advantage that a code of conduct might have for them in the European market as well as in international market. So we have to give them this clarity that you have mentioned. And only then we can persuade our SMEs clients, small SMEs, that by signing the code of conduct, they would have a significant advantage in the European market.
I mean, yes, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, but yes, I think that is one of the key questions, and I think there's a lot to be said for the code of conduct. But whether it's always sort of clear enough to potentially interested SMEs, what specifically the tangible benefits for them would be, I think is a good question, where more could be done.
Yeah.
Yes, and if I can complete on that, so while actually we believe it will be also important, and which we will try to make also some some activities around also the positive marketing dimension that can be derived from signing up to the code of conduct for SMEs. What will be important is actually that they go through the list of the different actions in the code of conduct, and that they actually identify through the IT tool and with the help of business support organizations where they could actually invest to improve their sustainability at the service of their financial sustainability. So we think that all the many objectives are extremely relevant for SMEs themselves in terms of their long-term strategy. As I said, starting with renewable energy and resource efficiency. So we understand that for some SMEs and signing up to something, what they might be afraid that there would be some additional administrative burden related to it, like being monitored, having to make a yearly declarations, etc. It could be perceived as a bit of a risk and something that they really don't have the time to lose on. But what we also like to do very much at some point when we will have a critical mass of SMEs is that also, yes, this possibility of networking between those different SMEs which are signatories of the code. That's something which also provides a strong added value. But for that, the problem is that you need to first have a certain threshold of all those SMEs. So you need to have a bit of front-runner SMEs who are actually, making this leap of faith and signing up to the code. But whether or not they're signing up to the code, really the first thing would be to help them in this specific context, because we see that yes, all the agri-food SMEs probably are facing challenges with regard to their input costs. So helping them to become more resource efficient, to control their energy costs. I mean, that's something they need. That's something which I think business support organizations need to help them on. And by having also this code, yes, they can identify the priorities. We will work this year on trying to provide more best practices. So for each of the different objectives and actions of the code, so that they can really see demonstrations of companies which have done that, which have invested, selected a certain technologies, and how it has brought results for those companies. So yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Do we have perhaps any other questions from the audience? Anything that you would like to share with or to ask our speakers today? I would like to give the floor to Bridget. Bridget.
Yeah, I would like to add, because in the sustainability group, we have kind of sustainability check in different areas. And the code of conduct could be added to that for the agri-food companies, but we will have the training on that, I think, on the last day of our meeting. So maybe it's good to make a kind of combination, because then we talk also about those kind of aspects, and then it will make it more easy to include this kind of codes of conduct. So, and there we also set priorities with the companies, and then you could also include some priorities of the code of conduct. So maybe that could be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much, Bridget. Anybody else or somebody that would like to comment on that, what Bridget has directly said? Jada.
Just wanted to ask whether there are any funding schemes foreseen to support SMEs in getting on board the code of conduct.
There is no specific funding which is associated to the code of conduct. Many of the actions are in the code of conduct. Yes, can eventually benefit from depending on what is available at national and regional level, especially with the RRF funding. For the rest, yes, also many of those actions might correspond actually to the some lines in the sustainability in the taxonomy, and so we know very well that also financing institutions are more and more attentive to actually only funding projects which are actually qualifying for one of those categories in the taxonomy. So that's it. You will also see next week, so we'll publish our transition pathway for the agri-food ecosystem, or we will also be listing there already doing a primary listing of the existing financing instruments for the also transition of the agri-food ecosystem. And in the future platform, we will also provide some information, but there is no specific funding for this code of conduct. Although next year we will have those what I mentioned under the single market program, those renewable energy communities for retail and agri-food. So there will be some funding, but you know probably very well that funding under the single market program is not huge. Last year we funded those cluster projects also for the agri-food sustainability cluster partnerships. And the years after, if budget is available at the scale of the single market program, of course, we will try to also do some additional small projects. But no, there is no specific dedicated budgetary envelope for SMEs to actually finance the code. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Anybody else who would like to ask our speakers anything that comes up to your mind concerning the two pretty interesting presentations today? Okay, I would like to pose a question to the audience, not the speakers. And it would be really nice to have your feedback on that. Would there be an interest for your clients or for our clients to join the code?
Hi, Spiros. I think it all comes back to what you said before. They need to know what's in it for them. So why is it interesting for SMEs to obey to have the code of conduct? I mean, they have to put effort and time in it, so it has to be of use somehow.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, definitely, because we know the SMEs and we know their needs. And taking that into account, I think that also Jada asked this kind of question about funding, because we know how the SMEs think, actually. So if there will be any kind of funding connected to the code of conduct or to the SMEs that will participate in the code of conduct will be, let's say, prioritized to get some funding in the future, that will be a significant advantage, let's say, to promote the code of conduct to the SMEs, so that to give them, you know, the added value of participating in the code of conduct, which is, in my opinion, not only that, but also, of course, other things they can, of course, gain, get a lot of best practices from other SMEs or large companies, how they do things in terms of digital transition, sustainability, resilience, and so on and so forth. But in the end, we have to deal with SMEs that really struggle to survive in the European environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
no, thank you for this very clear message. We understand that if it was up to us, I mean, we would clearly try to mobilize significant fundings for the purpose of providing financial support to the SMEs willing to implement the code. But you know well that yes, in the present situation, and especially in the context of the single market program, which is actually the financial instrument that we have, I cannot promise or hope that we will have hundreds of millions for that purpose. You know, there's this kind of there's no perspective that such funding will be available. On the other hand, there still is, that's why I mentioned it for the time being at member states level, but that depends really from one member state to the other, some funding which is for this recovery facility, which is national, and which is quite important, and which might eventually support one of the other actions, but it's not directly
specifically connected to the conduct.
No, they're not. They're not.
That's
but
the
some of
point.
the actions, because the code of conduct is actually presenting, if you want, like an overview or a strategic agenda of all the different actions which are relating to sustainability. So many of those potentially fall under some specific objectives identified at national level for investing in these investments or under the taxonomy. Yes.
Thank you very much, both. Anders, you would like to say something, ask something?
Yes, I would like to make a comment, because what if the code of conduct could actually become a very good dialogue tool with the SMEs that we know? Because I remember years back when CSR politics were popular, and a lot of companies felt that there's something completely new. We got to do something. We got to change everything now, because we have this new animal called CSR. What if many parts, actually, hopefully, of the code of conduct could actually make SMEs aware of, we are actually already there. We're actually doing a good job on these and these issues. So I very much support what Brigitte said about the sustainability check, and some kind of synergies with that could definitely be a way. So if we could use it as a dialogue, I'm not trying to downsize the challenges of having SMEs on board the code of conduct, but let's as EN people dig into it, so that we can definitely make an opinion about this, get into it, and then possibly find a way of using it as a dialogue tool with the SMEs that we talk to. Why not?
A very good point, in my opinion. We have, first of all, as EN advisors, take into account all this kind of information first and dig into it, and how we can make the advantage for the SMEs as such. Definitely. Dimitris, you would like to ask something?
Not quite. It's just a comment regarding what Anders just said. Synergies are good, but we don't need any overlapping. I mean, we don't need to have separate tools that do the same things. We don't want to have the same tools to achieve the same two different tools to achieve the same results. So if we were to use and to promote the code of conduct, we'd need to be sure that it would not mean extra effort for the companies with nothing in return.
Yeah. And Jada?
Yeah, mine is another comment because, okay, we promote the code of conduct as a tool of dialogue. We combine it with sustainability check, but then companies don't know enough the code of conduct itself. So, okay, we tell about the code, but there's no added value in their perception. So you want to be part of a team if that team is very famous. If no one knows the team, what is the point? And of course, we can work also on with a sort of extractive, myotical approach, talking to companies and extracting what they probably already do in terms of sustainability, in terms of the objectives that are already in there. But then they might tell you, okay, we're already doing it. Why should we sign this code of conduct? Because it's not an important label that we want to have on our website. Not yet. Maybe once it will become an important label that we have, like I'm organic. I have a sort of certification that enhance my added value. But not at this moment. Of course, we can ease the dialogue. We can promote the code of conduct. But probably from the Commission's side, we should have a more intense activity of promotion to let small companies, because the big ones, they already know that, as you said, Helen, they have the resources, they have whatever they want. I'm also collaborating with the Global Compact Italy. We had an event here and we discussed about all the sustainable development goals and all connected to the code of conduct. But they already know that they should reach the sustainable development goals, they should reach this. Why should they sign the code of conduct? That's what I mean. I'm getting as an industry association. Confindustria is the main industry association in Italy, and I'm sure our category federation has signed the code of conduct. But from the bottom up approach, when small companies come to me and I introduce them the code of conduct, and they say, "Okay, I'm already doing these things. Why should I sign? What are my benefits?" Instead of having my, as you said, commitments, burdens, and blah, etc. So that's just my remarks.
Okay, thank you, Giada. The floor to Julian.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the very interesting presentation. And I totally agree with Giada because I was thinking about our companies here in my region, and especially in the slow food ecosystem, because we have many companies engaged in sustainability in the food process. And my point of view, to be honest, it's very difficult to involve them if they don't see a really benefits. So I don't know if it's really possible to involve them if they don't if it's not linked with funding or other benefits, because it's as someone mentioned before, it's a question of time, because they have to invest the time in this kind of area, and it's not easy then to involve them. And of course, yes, we can have a dialogue with them, and we can also involve other stakeholders, local stakeholders, of course. But as Giada said, it's important that we can show the benefit, the added value for them. So that's my input.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Julian. Before coming to Dimitris, I haven't seen a question that we had in the chat, so I'm going to read it aloud. Could the code of conduct be considered as a support umbrella for innovative SME already developing technologies for food sustainability, plant-based, bioactive fertilizers, etc.? Would that be the case? Perhaps Helene or Martin could give some sort of information on that.
Apologies, Spiros, I was distracted. Can you repeat
No
the
problem,
question?
no problem.
No. Same for me. I have to say that yes, innovation clearly can benefit sustainability, and we think it's very important also to have that in mind. But the code of conduct itself was meant to be it's about also the deployment of existing let's say technologies and going into the direction of developing healthier food. So there's a lot of technology and technological innovation which is probably needed by the companies to achieve some of the objectives of the code. But if it could be like a support umbrella, which is the question, I think that's maybe a bit not exactly the overall objective of the code. That's a bit different, I would say. Yes.
Okay. Now, since we're running out of time, I would like to give the floor to Dimitris and Anders, and then some sort of conclusion remarks by Sarah and Christos as well as from the speakers. And first of all, Dimitris, we would like to hear what you would like to say.
Yes, just a quick remark and suggestion. We talked a lot about funding. Funding is not everything. Elaine said that the companies that join the code of conduct, that sign it, might have access to networking opportunities. And that would be also interesting, but we do that a lot in our network. We organize plenty of brokerage events. What would be interesting would be an next opportunity to have access to big retailers, for instance. If you manage to have big retailers join the code of conduct and then offer access to small suppliers that commit to the code of conduct principles, that would be a serious and important and significant advantage. So it's not just funding. But this should come.
Yeah, sorry.
That's an interesting idea. We will have to discuss that with in the liaison group, also with stakeholders representing the retail sector.
Yeah, just because all SMEs, small companies are looking, retailers or companies abroad that they would like to collaborate with. And this is a very good point, Dimitris. Thank you very much for that. Anders.
Very quickly, I just got an idea as we spoke. I'm representing a national Danish food and bioresource cluster. And actually, I'm one of two persons committed to work with SME members. We're having a working group where we talk about services. And I would actually like to challenge them with the code of conduct. We have 11 volunteers from different spheres of the food industry. It could be very interesting to hear what they think about this. Some of them are already international, but that was just an idea I had. So a little, I think I should challenge them, inform them, and challenge them, and then get some feedback that I might actually be able to share with you afterwards. That was just a thought. Sorry.
That would be great, Anders. Yeah, it's a very good initiative as well. So we would very much like to try and to promote and to make this code of conduct part of the tools that an SME can make use of. But of course, if we can direct link it with some significant advantages that the SMEs can have out of this code of conduct, that would be the best promoting material, let's say, that we can have as a network, as a sector group Agri-Food for our companies.
Again, it's not just about money, it can also be the brand. I want to be part of the code of conduct.
Exactly.
We have to bring companies to that point.
Right. It's not funding is not everything, and we all agree on that. It's also part of a networking possibility, perhaps, or bring together the SMEs and the retailers, as Dimitris has said. And now we've got another question which I cannot ignore. Could the code of conduct evolve as a seal or a certificate? That means, for example, the SME that is part of the code of conduct can take a certificate out of that so that they can use it in their websites and so on.
Well, I think, but Melissa, maybe you have more technical information on that if this has already been done. Melissa?
I don't think we have a certificate, no.
No, we don't.
If I may, I think this is an important point. It refers back to the comparison with other initiatives that we've done. Of course, there are voluntary initiatives that have this kind of a certificate where then companies can use a logo.
Exactly.
But typically those initiatives are more focused on a specific and sometimes also involve a sort of an auditing process. So if you meet these waste reduction goals, for instance, and you can use this logo. As I said at the outset, the code, of course, is a lot broader than that, and one of its strengths is that its flexibility. But equally, that means the question of whether there could be a logo or some sort of a certification or similar is a bit of a tricky one, because without some sort of let's say an audit or some sort of common goals where you can say, okay, we have achieved a 50% greenhouse gas reduction, hence you get the logo. But because under the code, one company can commit to 30% and another to 50% and another to 80%, but another company may not commit to greenhouse gas emissions anyway, but can instead commit to using more sustainable packaging materials. That is, with the current very broad scope, I think that would be very difficult to achieve, in my personal opinion, based on what we've seen.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I could continue with the discussion a little bit longer, of course, but we are completely out of time now. And of course, you are there, we've got your contacts. We will disseminate also the video which is recorded among our sector group members in order to have some more feedback, some more ideas on that. And we can definitely work on that part of the code of conduct, how to make it more lucrative, let's say, for the SMEs to make use of. I would like now give the floor to Christos and Sarah for the closing remarks. Christos?
Yes, hello. That was very interesting. I didn't want to get too much involved in the discussion. I prefer that the members could, take the floor and express their opinion and also address their requests and demands. And I have the colleagues of Grow here who are the ones that could be the more to the point. They could have the more to the point comments on that. I understand also overall that the code of conduct it embodies our dedication to fostering transparency and sustainability and fairness within the agri industry, and it's very, very important. These aspirational objectives, they delineate specific targets and a comprehensive list of tangible measures that have to be taken into account. To me, the most important part has to do with what the colleagues have already said about how we get the SMEs to be involved in all this. I mean, it's very, very important. And as you also said, funding is not the only motivation for them. There are other ones, and I would be very happy to see if we can discuss this further with the colleagues from Grow on how this can be somehow implemented, because I understand that the goals we set are always important, but it's also very important at the level of an SME to see the added value behind that.
Right.
Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Sarah. I look forward to seeing many or most of you in Cologne in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Christos. Thanks a lot. Sarah?
From my side, well, thank you so much for the presentations as well as for the interaction with the members, for all your comments, suggestions, and ideas. And I think we can really see this. Let's see this as a starting point, this session now, and we can further discuss indeed in Cologne, and we can set up other sessions to see how we deal with implementing this code of conduct, how we can make the SMEs aware, how we can involve them. So I think let's take it from here and let's see how this evolves and how we continue the work. So but thank you to all of you. So
thank you very much. I totally agree. This was a starting point from the European Commission and together with the sector group Agri-Food, how we can better work together in order to make the code of conduct, let's say, usable for the SMEs, and how we can help our SMEs use the code of conduct in order for them to become better, sustainable, and more resilient in the future. I would like to thank you all for your time and your patience. And I really look forward to meeting many of you in Cologne. And of course, thanks a lot to Helene and Martin for your valuable time and for the great presentations. I would very much like to get back to that once we have more input and how, whenever we can, we have more information to discuss upon. Thank you very much to all of you and see you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.